to do that. There we go. And I just ask that everyone keep themselves on mute unless they'd like to ask a question, anything like that. You can go ahead and mute yourself at that time. If you'd like to actually ask a question in the chat because it's more comfortable for you, go ahead and do that. We're going to be monitoring the chat throughout the workshop. So go ahead and ask those questions. Camera is totally optional. Obviously, we would love to see your lovely faces this evening, but whatever your comfort level is totally fine with us. If there's anything that you want to go over again after watching and participating in tonight's workshop, I am going to be sending a recording out tomorrow morning. So you'll have access at any time to review this information and view it at any time, or if you have to leave a little bit early, that's okay too. And I just want to let you guys know our next workshop after tonight is on May 25th, and it's going to be all about merchandising your vendor booth. Tips, tricks, hacks to make your vendor booth really attractive, eye-catching, and just give you some shortcuts that you might not have thought about in the past. So make sure you go to our events page to register for that one. That one's going to be led by Joanna Craig. Some of you might know Joanna. She's the founder of Olam Clay Company. So that's going to be really cool. Okay, enough with my spiel. I'm super excited to have Erica Goldstein here with us today. You might know Erica. She is an OG Boston Women's Market vendor. She's been with us pretty much since day one, and she inspires women through her bold and bright designs and original artworks. But Erica actually went to business school, and she's a self-trained artist. So these two kind of specialties go hand in hand when you're running a small business. And she's also worked for companies and organizations of varying sizes in their marketing, social, and branding teams and those sorts of fields. So she is well-versed in brand strategy for businesses of all sizes. So I'm really excited to have her here today. And she's also begun doing branding and design services for Boston Women's Market small businesses throughout the past couple of years. She might have worked with a couple of you already. So I'm super excited to hand it over to Erica.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kara. Hi, guys. I know a couple of you on here, but I am so excited to be here. Quick shout out to my mom for joining. Thank you.
Hi, Mom.
I'm so excited to be here, though. Like Kara said, I am in the Boston area. I'm in Brookline, and I'm kind of all over the city at all times, popping up mostly in the summer, fall, and holiday times at markets, and then working full-time during the week. So always keeping myself busy, but branding is at the heart of everything I do. It's really my passion. It's one of my favorite subjects to talk about. So when Kara in Africa reached out about me presenting this, I was obviously on board, but I will take you through everything from the basics to tools that you can actually implement after this session that you can take home with you. And as Karen mentioned, I'm always a resource. So you can always reach out to me via DM or email, and happy to help you kind of work through this strategy on your own as it pertains to your business too. And I will also mention I'm getting over a cold, so I will probably be popping, just sucking candies as we go, so I don't have a coughing attack. So just bear with me on that. But thank you guys again for being here. Okay, let's move to the first slide. Okay, so hi, I'm Erica. As Karen mentioned, I am a local artist. I'm the founder and brand strategist and artist at The Blank Canvas Co., which is my personal art brand, where I empower women through bold and bright designs inspired by creativity. So everything from quote canvases, which you can kind of get a sense for here, to actually starting to do brand and logo design for other small businesses and women all over, so not just in Boston. And when I'm not doing my art or painting, you can find me working full-time in marketing. So as Karen mentioned, I've actually been working full-time while balancing my business since I started almost, oh my gosh, like 9 years ago at this point, which is crazy. So it's always been a struggle to have that work-life balance. It's something I'm always working through. I am an overcommitter at my core because I just want to do it all. But usually I'm working full-time in marketing all day and then working on my business in the evenings and on the weekends where I'm usually popping up at those markets. I also have just a personal passion for social media and content creation. So I'm pretty active on my Instagram and always trying to support other small businesses on their Instagram accounts as well. I love copywriting, fun brand copy, and just being able to write in a way that brings people into my brand or other brands through my marketing services. I also personally just love design. So I'm always scrolling through Pinterest and Instagram for just ways that I can teach myself how to do things better or ways that I can decorate my home or get painting inspiration. And I also just have a passion for running, yoga, keeping myself healthy to balance my love for cheese and Annie's mac and cheese. So those are a few fun facts about me and my Bernese Mountain Dog, depending on where he is. We just got him, may make an appearance at the end of this too. So that's kind of what my day-to-day looks like, but we can actually dive in now, which I'm super excited to get started, guys. Okay, so as you know, today we are talking about brand strategy. We're going to be going through the ways to create a cohesive brand. And contrary to popular thought, is that it doesn't really start with your logo and your imagery and the design. I know personally, and Kara knows this about me too, that's always where I want to start. When I was building out my email list, I was looking for something that was aesthetically pleasing to send to my customers, and Kara's like, you really got to build it from the business side. So I'm going to take that same approach as we go through the branding stuff today. All of the logo design and imagery is really secondary. What starts first is your idea and your passion to what brand you'll be building. So we'll get into that. We'll also cover your customer profile or your target audience, how to analyze what competitors are out there within your industry, and then all the fun stuff about your color palette, your design, and how to actually market yourself. All right, guys. So let's start with the basics. So a brand is a unique point of view which strategically sets a business apart from its competition. It's the story a company tells its audience about itself and the world. This starts with you. People really connect with brands based on the owner or the founder or the mission of the brand, less so than the products or services that brand is selling. They want to be able to look at a brand and say, I see myself within that brand. I feel seen. I feel heard by that brand. I understand what they're doing and I love what they sell. So the what they sell really comes secondary. It's the core passions and motivators that really drive the branding basics. So we're going to go into each of these individually, but just to give you a quick overview, it always starts with an idea. Then you go and you analyze your competition and your audience. So you really try to set the stage and say, who else is doing what I want to do? Who else is working in the industry that I want to be in? Who am I inspired by? And who is buying from them? Like, who do I want to target? From there, you really pair your idea with your competition and your audience to create your own unique reason to be or your purpose and brand story. So, this is going to be individualized to you based on your personal motivations and passions. And then the fifth step, like I said, it's always more towards the end, is to create that visual identity, that design, your logo, your colors. How is my website going to look? What should my Instagram feed look like? And then from there, you actually pick your platforms that you're going to market and tell your story to that target audience that you identified. Okay, guys, so we're going to start with your idea. So most of you are probably here because you either have an idea in your head that you haven't actioned yet or something that you've been working on intermittently over the past couple of years. Your idea is something that stems from you. You are your brand. So whenever you're feeling lost in this branding process, go back to that and say, what do I stand for? Why am I here? What do I care about? People are looking at your brand as a representation of you. And I really liked this quote, so I wanted to share this. So people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, your why, your purpose. Most brands are purchased from an emotional point of view, so people really connect with what you stand for, and it's something that's going to align with their beliefs, their perceptions, and their motivations. So the three things that really make up a core idea of a brand is building together your passions, your values, and your interests. Your passions can be thought about as what lights you up, what excites you, what do you feel passionate about, what gets you out of bed every morning. Your values are really what makes up your morals, what you feel strongly about, what you stand for. And your interests can be looked at as industries or certain areas that you feel really excited about. And we'll go into each of these two with a couple examples. But some questions to ask yourself as you're going through this initial step on your own is, what lights me up? What is my purpose? What do I feel strongly about? And what industries do I love? What are those industries that you find yourself scrolling through, reading about as you're enjoying your morning coffee? What are the accounts you're following on Instagram because you just can't get enough of their content? That's where you want to focus. So I'll start with an example with my business. So as I mentioned, I create art that empowers women through bold and bright designs inspired by positivity. So my passions are my personal growth, empowering other women, painting, of course, that's something I've always loved, and just being bold and encouraging others to be bold too. My values are community, spreading kindness and positivity, equality, justice, and courage. And my interests, of course, as you know by now, are art and design, women's rights, body positivity, beverages, and animals. So I've really had to take a step back and think about this, because when I started my business, even though I had the Blank Canvas Co., I had a website, I had an email, I simply said, I'm an artist and I paint everything. Whatever you want me to paint, I will paint. It was very broad. So I really had to take a step back the past couple of years and say, what are my passions, my values, my interests? What lights me up? And what is going to make my brand different? So another example of a brand I know you guys all are very, very well aware of is Apple. So their passions really started from innovation, creativity, minimalism. Their values were simplicity, helping others, and collaboration. And their interests were, of course, in tech and design. We're going to talk a little bit about them in the next section, but just something to think about as we start to go through, like thinking about this massive brand that completely changed the industry of cell phones. It started in these simple principles, and they built products and a brand and design around these. With that, I'm going to take a quick pause for questions. I want to make sure you guys are asking them as they come to you and not having to wait till the end. So I will open up the floor.
Yeah, and as I said before, chat your questions. If you want to unmute yourself, you're welcome to go ahead and do that. But while we wait, I do have a question, Erica. And this is a topic that has been touched on throughout our workshops throughout the years, is like, you know, you are the face of your brand, but it is super scary to put yourself out there. And you are really good at that. You are always introducing yourself on social media or reintroducing yourself. People know who you are in association with your brand if they follow you. And how can people get over that fear of, like, I'm the brain behind the brand? Because it's scary. Do you have any tips about that? Because that must be in relation to, you know, they're supporting you, they're buying your brand. So any guidance on that?
Yeah, this is a really, really good one. And I actually had one of my clients come to me recently, and her artwork is beautiful. It's everywhere. And she said to me, like, I'm so nervous to put my face out there and say, hi, this is mine. But I would say, I would challenge yourself to look at your brand. If you're willing to share your products and your designs, give yourself credit. Like, give yourself credit. Like, people should know who's making this. It shouldn't just be another product on the shelf. And you would be so shocked the moment you start sharing more about yourself, showing your face, expressing your hardships if you're having a bad day, like just being really honest and open to the point where you feel comfortable. You don't have to share everything. You'll start to see the effect it has on your sales and people and new customers. I will tell you, like, I've been in marketing for years. I did theater growing up, and I still get nervous. Like, I was nervous for this. I get nervous every time I'm like posting something with my face on my stories. Like, it's nerve-wracking for sure, because you're putting yourself out there to be potentially judged. But I think another thing to remember is that you will not appeal to everyone, and that's okay. This is something I've learned. And I'm a people pleaser. I want everyone to love what I do, but not everyone will love what you do. Not everyone will relate to you on that level, and that's okay. remember, you're targeting a specific audience. You're targeting friends and family and a specific audience who you want to put your brand in front of. And those are the people who you want your approval from. Those are the people you're trying to connect with. Not everyone will be that person, and that's okay. And I would just start slow, like challenge yourself. If you're not doing it at all right now, challenge yourself to do it once or twice a week, sharing something you're excited about. Maybe you're not ready to show your face, but you show yourself holding your cup of coffee and sharing your morning routine. Just starting slow, and as you start to do that, you'll get more and more comfortable for sure.
That's awesome. I know, I mean, I know that's something that I personally struggle with. I think like that's what Africa, if you guys haven't met Africa, she's really good at that aspect. So
She's
she
so good at
pushes
it.
me to do that kind of stuff. I'm like, why are we posting photos of ourselves? It's not about us. Well, I mean, we should put ourselves out there. We should, people, vendors want to know who they're working with and who they can rely on. So that's awesome. I do have another question, but I think we should just keep moving on and maybe I'll ask that later.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, cool. All right, so we can dive into competitors first. So you've already started with your idea. Then you're going to start to look at the landscape of going back to, let's quickly go back to your interests. You're thinking about your interests, your industries, that area that you want to break into and focus on. Who is actually playing in that field? Who are the key players? What are they offering? And another quote I wanted to share with you guys is, in order to differentiate yourself from your competition, you need to know what perceptions they own in the minds of the existing audience. So we're going to start with competitors and then we're going to go on to audience after, but the two really go hand in hand. Your competitors are those that are people doing things in your industry that you're excited about, that inspire you. You look at them and you're like, wait, how are they doing that? That's what I want to do. Like, then I would say, like, the hardest thing I think, especially that women struggle with, is comparison when it comes to that, to your competition. And I think the key thing is, whenever you're feeling like I'm behind or they're doing what I want to do, there's always someone doing this. How am I going to do it? You have to remember that everyone is unique. Every brand is unique. Every person who's running the brand is unique. It goes back to you as a person. Your superpower is you. So use that feeling of like, oh my gosh, I want that, or jealousy or comparison, target that back into inspiration. Look at those brands and those competitors and say, wow, I love what they're doing. If I were to do something similar, I might change it because I stand for this. So really try to make note of those things. And it'll really help you figure out who your audience is too. So, like I said, that starting point is to really look and say who, what, and why. Who is doing what I'm doing? So, for my brand, what other artists exist either in New England or in Boston in my main markets? What are they selling? Are they doing paintings on canvas? Are they doing prints? Are they doing magnets? Are they really niche down on one thing? And what, most importantly, what is their why? Like, what are they painting and why is it important to their audience? For me, I'm an artist. I'm painting work for women. That is my why. That is what I'm painting because it's what inspires me. So a couple key questions to ask yourself as you take this back and do this step on your own is, who and what already exists in this space? What are these people doing, saying, selling? What do customers think about them? Read their reviews, go on their Instagram, see what their followers are saying in their comments, see what they're responding to them. I mean, this is all public information. Just kind of start doing research and collecting this, observing, listening, seeing where your competitors are and who's tuning into them. And lastly, what prices they're selling their work or their offering or their services at. We're not going to touch on price too much today just because it's very specific to each industry. But I know this is a really, really tough topic. I think we could do like a whole webinar just on this. And I would say, as you're thinking through your pricing, it's always great, and you should be looking at your competitor pricing, because you want to make sure wherever you're pricing yourself, it makes sense into what people are already buying. So you're not pricing yourself like hundreds of dollars above your competition and then pricing yourself out. You're kind of finding that sweet spot where you're being competitive with your pricing, but your why is really driving that. So just something to keep in the back of your mind. And again, this why, this is really the most important thing here. This is your reason to be. It's what makes every brand unique. and it's not something that can be replicated. So again, whenever you're doubting yourself, remember that you are your own superpower. There is no one who thinks and acts and does what you do, and that is how you can drive your brand and differentiate yourself. So going back to Apple, this is really where we make that connection point. So if you remember, they were really excited about design and technology, minimalism, helping people. When they came into the market, we had flip phones. We had Nokia, we had BlackBerry, Motorola, Sony, these pretty like hefty, like thicker phones that had to flip or slide. They couldn't totally fit in your pocket. They had a ton of buttons. The main function of them was to just be a phone. The industry was cell phones. What Apple did is they came in and said, we make great computers. They're user friendly, they're beautifully designed, and they're easy to use. They didn't look at their product as a cell phone. They came in and said, we're going to disrupt the industry. We see what you guys are doing. We know people use their phones to call and text and stay connected to their people. But what they're not doing is connecting them to every other aspect, creating this smart capability where you can be tuned into your email, you can be tuned into social media and inspirational platforms like Facebook or Pinterest. They really created a category of one and came in and took everything that existed and flipped it on their head because of their passions for minimalism and design. So this, I know this is an example that's shared often, but I really feel like it's one of the best and the clearest ones. So this is always a good one to keep in mind and kind of think about as you're building out your own. Okay, moving into identifying your audience. So everyone is not your consumer. This, like I said, was one of the biggest lessons I learned. I spent probably the first 3 years of my business just trying to paint anything that anyone could send me. And to be honest with you, it didn't fill up my cup. Like I would get things that were like, hey, can you paint my uncle? And I would be stressed. I'm like, I don't paint people, but it's money and I'm trying to grow my brand. So I should just take this commission. And I would take it and it wouldn't be my best work. I wouldn't be excited about it. I'd be working on it and dreading it. So it not only had an impact on the work that I was showing other people, but it also had an impact on my excitement towards my own brand. It's really better to be niche than to be broad. And I know it's scary to be like, oh my God, but if I focus on just this audience, am I going to miss sales? Am I going to miss clients? Am I going to miss customers? And you might, but they're not the right people for you. And that's okay. You would be shocked how many people within your niche exist if you're branding and marketing yourself correctly. So, in order for you to be meaningful as a brand, you must first start with who you're selling to and what they even care about. If you're just saying, well, I have a great product idea and I have this amazing business idea, but no one can make the connection point to why it matters to them, they're not going to care about your brand. They're not going to buy your services. They're not going to buy your products. You have to reach people from your why. Ultimately, their why, their passions, their purpose, their motivators should match what you and your brand stand for. These really stem from three key things: your needs, desires, and pain points. We are all customers and consumers, and that's something that's really important to mention. We all have our own individual needs, desires, pain points, things that frustrate us, and they all equate to our why. Their why should match your why. And that's probably one of the biggest takeaways that you will have from this presentation. So key questions to ask yourself: who am I trying to reach? That can stem from what you've done through your market research. Why do these people care? Why do they care about my brand, my product? Why does it make their life better? What are their needs? Like, what do they absolutely have to have on any given day? What are their desires? Is there a way that I can inspire them or attract them through something that is exciting to them? And what are their unsolved pain points? What are those competitors in that space not solving for? What's that white space opportunity, that blank canvas, that moment that no one is touching upon, that's wide open, that's up for grabs? Other little things that you should be keeping note of are age, gender, demographic, income, occupation, their interests, their behaviors. Behaviors is really important. That goes back to like, where are your audience members shopping? Where are they reading? Are they listening to the Morning Brew? Are they reading the Times? Are they just scrolling through social? If they're scrolling through social, you should be on social. It's really finding those key differentiators and making note of them. It doesn't have to be extensive, but to understand at least who you're targeting, this is going to help you make that purpose or differentiator and create your why and explain it properly to your audience too. So one thing that I find is really a really helpful exercise to do that I'll do professionally if we're, for example, I used to work at Shark Ninja, I would make shark vacuums, and we would always start with, well, who are we marketing to? Who's cleaning their home with this vacuum? It's going to be mostly women, right? It's not going to be all women, but we really need to niche down. So it's going to be women. Their age group is usually between like mid 30s to lower 60s. Okay, what does that group care about? Are they boomers? Are they millennials? Like, where are they connected? They're probably using Facebook more than Instagram, so I shouldn't be spending all my time on Instagram. And it's really paring that down. So I have a little example here. You can simply, when you're doing this exercise, Google brand identity or customer identity, and there's tons of examples of how you can build this out. And this really isn't something that you need to share externally. It's just for you to do that exercise to really understand who you're targeting. And you can create a fake consumer. Like this can say, Kara, age 30, where does she live? And really focus on someone within your network who you're like, they are my perfect consumer. If they buy into my product, then everyone who is like them will want to buy my product. So this is just something good to try. But again, it's a lot of just social listening, looking at different platforms and making notes along the way. Okay, that was a big section. So we're going to pause. Questions, thoughts?
Yeah, that's a hefty section. I can share a personal like Boston women's market perspective. I know whenever we do paid advertising a lot for our markets. And whenever we're creating paid ads for social media in particular, we're focusing on behavior big time. Of course, we're focusing on location. Like, obviously, we're not going to spend our marketing dollars to folks in Arkansas, but we're also really focusing on what we think our shopper does. And I will tell you, like, every single market, I learn about a different shopper segment that maybe I haven't included before. And I start including those behaviors into our advertising campaigns. So I think behavior, like figuring out like where people like shopping, what they like doing on the weekend, where do they hang out with their friends, like what do they like to drink, like all those types of things. If you can create that concept in your mind, is so helpful for us, I know. And sometimes it changes on location. Like depending on where the market's going to be, those behaviors change.
Yeah, I was actually just going to mention that too. Like something good to think about for any makers or artists who do pop-ups. Like I know I personally have a tendency whenever I see an opportunity, I jump on it. And I sometimes don't think about the location, the audience. Like not every market is going to be the right fit. Like for me, I do really well at breweries. That's the kind of artwork, the kind of people, the target audience. When I've done something more at an indoor space where like the pop-up is secondary, it really doesn't attract the audience that I want. And that's going to be different for every brand. Like for me, Boston Women's Market is one of the best ones for me because it ties into my mission to empower women. Whereas SOA for me can sometimes be up and down just because the crew that's coming in is often younger families, it's couples, it's not necessarily like my young independent women who are coming in. So you really have to strategically filter those out as you make those decisions because any market or pop-up you're doing or any opportunity you're taking usually comes with a cost to you, whether it's paid marketing or a pop-up or something else.
Yeah, exactly. And we can, I mean, I can tell you about various vendors where one weekend they are, they do amazing business at our markets. And then the next weekend, different location, they might only make a couple sales. And it's just the communities we're in believe in different things. And you might think of Boston as just being very, oh, it's just Boston. It's not. Jamaica Plain is completely different from Charlestown, which is completely different from Cambridge, which, and it's all these even local nuances that you have to think about.
Definitely. And I think too, like another thing to just remind yourself is like when you have a bad market day, or you're like sitting there and it's 3 hours into your 5 hour market and you're like, I've made 2 sales, like I've broken even, I have no dollars in my pocket, like this was a waste of time. Remember that it really isn't. It's really, you're doing market research as you're standing there. You're observing who's coming in, who's interested, who's not interested, and really taking into account like, okay, I'm at warehouse today in Somerville and it's been all men and I've only made 2 sales. Does that have anything to do with the fact that they're not connecting with my work? So take those moments instead of being upset with yourself. And I'm guilty of this too, like to really look around and make that your market research. That's live market research, which is pretty cool.
Love
Awesome.
that.
Any other questions on this section before we dive into my favorite part?
Yeah, anyone feel free to, even if it's a past section, go ahead and put them in the chat. I don't think we have the raise your hand feature, but unmute yourself. Love to hear from you guys.
Julia, I feel you for sure. Like I can say too, like there was one market, my mom was there for this too. Like I went all the way to New York City for this market that was seemingly perfect. It was a women's market. It was around the holidays. We got there, the location was a little bit different than what was advertised. So it was Soho, but it was really on the border of Soho. There was rain. It wasn't well advertised. And guess what? It wasn't just me. None of us made back our money. We probably only made back half of what we had paid. And so I spent all this time traveling and packing my car and getting there. But what I did take out of it was, okay, I got a sense for who was buying. I met all these awesome other vendors and women. And I learned that I'm probably not going to do that event again. Like now I know that those types of events probably aren't the best, or I should have done more research on the location. So just things to take note of as you go. It's not always going to be a productive sales day, and that's okay. Okay, should we roll into the next section? Cool. Okay, defining your purpose, your why. This is my absolute favorite. This is really pairing together your vision, that original idea, with all of the research you've done about your competition and your audience. So this is where you really start to focus down on your brand and your niche. So you take your initial idea, which if you remember is your passions, your values, and your interests, and from there you build out that purpose or your reason to be. Remember, you can't be everything to everyone. Key questions to ask yourself. What am I on this earth to do? What is my purpose? Why do I wake up in the morning? What fills my cup? What's my life mission? And I know these are deep questions, but this is where you start to ask those questions. It's less about what am I interested in? It's really like, why am I here? Like, if I were to do this for the rest of my life, like, what would make me the happiest? What makes my brand different? And why should people care about my brand? And then the answers to these questions will really help you define down and niche down to what those details are about your brand, your features, your benefits, whether you're making original canvases or magnets, or whether you're making like bracelets or necklaces, depending on your audience, or whether you're offering wedding planning services for a year or you're doing it for a month. Like, what are people looking for and what makes you different when you're offering that? So you really need to first ground yourself in your what and your why. What am I doing and why does it matter? So I paint bold and bright artwork, and why does it matter? The artwork that I'm painting embodies women and women's issues and key things that I think should be talked about that often aren't. And that relates back to my passion for being bold. One really awesome exercise that I actually did probably again like 3 or 4 years into building my brand, which was definitely too late, but I started to learn all of this as I went, was to make a list of 10 to 15 key adjectives that describe your brand's character or you as a person. I would also encourage you to ask other people who know you really well. That's something that I did. I reached out to past managers. I asked my fiance, I asked my parents. I said, you could pick 5 words. What would you say? And I made a list of them and I still have it in my phone. And I used that to start to say, wow, there's a lot of similarities here. Like there were like 5 people that said positive. There were 5 people that said something else. Like you start to see how people perceive you, and then you start to realize how others perceive you is often how you perceive yourself. So it becomes really easy to streamline that into your why. Then you start to create your mission statement. This is a super, super simple one liner that says what you are, what you do. And it's really built on your purpose or your why, your audience, and your offering. So I'm going to give you an example that you can use to build out your own. And again, I'm happy off of this call to help you build that out. And I would say too, this is something you should think about if someone goes to your Instagram page and they see Erica Goldstein and then you have your bio right beneath. It's that one liner where they go to your page, they've never met you, they've stumbled upon you, but they can know exactly what you do and why you do it right when they land. So for me, my one liner is the Blank Canvas Co. is a creative brand that empowers boss babes through custom art and brand design. So if we break this down, my purpose or my why is empowering others. My audience is boss babes and women. Of course, it's more specific than that when it comes to who I'm actually targeting, when it comes to demographics, age, location, all of that. But my offering is custom art and brand design. So someone reading this says, okay, Blank Canvas is the name. I know that she's a creative brand, so she's a designer or artist of sorts. And her mission is to empower, her audience is boss babes or women, and what she does is create art and brand design. There's tons of examples about this out there. You can search mission statement, personal statement. I definitely encourage you guys to take 10 minutes when you're doing this part of the exercise to just Google or to look at other people that inspire you within your segments. I know for me, 2 of my favorites who I love to just watch their content, and I feel like we have a lot of similarities, are Paige from Paige Lindsay Designs and Laurel Greenfield. When you go to their page, you see exactly the kind of art they create and why they do it. So try to do that exercise and go through that with people in your own industry too. Questions?
I have a question in you know, when you're first starting your business, going through these exercises, it could maybe it's a little clearer, but as a business, maybe that is 1 year in, 2 years in, 3 years in, you kind of have all this baggage already. And like, maybe you realize that you need to go back and reevaluate or fine tune what you're doing. Do you have any tips about that and like where to start? Because you know, you're so deep in already and you put so much time and energy in, and then you're like, well, maybe I haven't been doing this right, or maybe I need to reevaluate what my mission is, or you know what I'm trying to say?
Totally. This is a really good question. And what I will say is think about Dunkin' Donuts. They just rebranded from Dunkin' Donuts to Dunkin'. They changed their logo. They tried to change what they stand for. Same with McDonald's. They started to refocus on healthy eating, whereas they were originally like French fries and burgers. Any brand can change their identity at any point. Remember, you are your brand. You have the ability to do that, and you don't have to start over. And I actually wouldn't encourage you to start over unless you're not feeling passionate about it anymore. What I would do is look back at your brand and say, what is working? What is not working? You know, for me, I've been on Etsy for 2 years. And then I look at all my other new platforms that I've started in the last 6 months. And I look at Etsy and I'm like, is this filling my cup? Am I spending my time there? Are my customers responding? Not really. Where should I be focusing my time instead? Should it be moving to something like Fair and doing wholesale? Am I going to get more bang for my buck? Am I going to be more excited? Am I going to be able to get in front of more stores that really represent my mission and what I stand for and can share that with their customers? So it's okay to make those tweaks and changes along the way. What I would say is to take some time to really think about it and do that exercise of like, what do I want to keep? What's working? What am I still excited about? What do I dread in my day? Like what do I sit here and just avoid? Because it's not it's something that was a pillar when I started, but maybe like it's really shifted as I've learned. And it's okay because it's a process. It's a learning process. Like you're growing. I did my website 2 years ago. I'm already looking at it now and I'm like, yeah, there's parts of this that don't really represent me anymore. That's okay. It's a sign of growth. It's a sign that you're moving and getting closer and closer and closer and chipping away to get to the exact brand you should be. So it is intimidating and that's okay. But I would strategically try to sit down and also use your data to drive those decisions too. Like on Instagram, if you have a business account or a creator account, I think you can also do this. Look at your insights. If you have a Shopify or an Etsy, go in and look at your analytics. Where are your customers coming from? How often are they buying? Are you the one driving them to Etsy, or is Etsy actually doing the legwork for you? Because you're also paying them to do that. If they're not doing their part, does it matter to have your dollars there or your customers that you want to be targeting there? So really use that data so that you can make informed decisions too. Other questions?
That's awesome. If anyone has any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat.
We might have one. Oh, thanks, Say. That means a lot. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. There honestly, what's the hardest thing is like there is so much information on the internet that sometimes you start to Google and you just start to like spiral and you're like, there's so much I don't know, and then you're overwhelmed and then you don't take any action. So sometimes having like a targeted, very simple step by step, like branding in its core is very simple. When you break it down to 6 steps that you can actually action instead of Googling and reading all these articles, like it's very, very overwhelming because not all of it applies to you.
Yeah. And I think going back to what you said, Erica, about how like you just redid your website and you're already looking at it feeling like some of it isn't true to you anymore. I feel like the brand process is just going to be that for as long as you have the brand and as long as you have the business. I don't think it ever should be a static thing. It should always be evolving with your learnings and who you are as a person and who are you as a product. You're on mute.
Thank you. Classic. Okay, guys, I'm going to keep rolling. We're getting towards the end, and then we'll also have a full Q&A at the end. We'll leave some time there. So if you've been holding on to questions or you're still kind of digesting, that's totally fine. Okay, the fun stuff, creating your visual identity. So this is going to be everything from choosing your business name to thinking about the images you want to put on your Instagram feed. This comes after you build your purpose. This is really, really, really important to note. I think my brand is a really good, bad example of this. If you look at the logo that I have on my website right now, it's black and white. It's beautiful. One of my friends helped me do it. I love it, but it's black and white. It doesn't tell anyone what I do. Because I figured out my purpose after. Yeah.
I've never even realized that before, but you're right.
Yeah. Yep. Because I created that first, and that's the designer in me. I was like, I need to have something that looks really visually cool. And then I thought about my mission of empowering women. And I look at that logo and I'm like, nothing in that logo tells my customers what I do or why I do it, and I'm moving towards something that's more colorful and bold and inviting. But that's why this step is so much later in the process. Because once you know what you stand for, then you could build out the visuals that complement that. So when all of it is put together and balanced in perfect harmony, it gives birth to successful brand identity. So your visual identity or your brand identity is the culmination of all of these things together. So your business name, what are you going to call yourself? I mean, thankfully, what I picked back then was something that at the core was what now relates to my mission about creating a blank canvas, having every day start over, start fresh, be positive, leave your baggage from Monday, don't bring it into Tuesday. You have the power to recreate yourself as a woman every day. Thank God those two things aligned. Otherwise, I would have a completely different business name right now. But your name, it could be your personal name or it can be something that really defines what your mission is in just a few words. Your slogan, and we're going to go into each of these individually, but your slogan is really your tagline. It's different from your mission statement. It's more of that catchy marketing fluff. You don't have to have a slogan. It's something fun. If you think of like big brands like Dunkin' or Apple, all of them have that. It's not necessary, but again, you can't really build that out until you've done your purpose exercise. Your logo, you guys all know what that is, your color palette. So anything that you're putting on your Instagram, your website should really have that cohesive look and feel. Your typography or your fonts really play into that too. You know, if you are someone who is building a brand that's very like serious, maybe it's like accounting, or you want it to be very buttoned up and clean, you might pick something like a Times New Roman, something very simple. It's not going to be flashy and branded and scripty. Like it really needs to match your voice and your brand. And then of course your images. Your images should be something that that people look at on your feed, and it's almost a mood board of what your brand is. So to when you're starting to do this exercise at home, these are kind of guidelines that you can use as you go through. Your business name ideally is about 1 to 3 words. It's simple, it's straightforward. Do not overcomplicate it. If you're finding yourself trying to like put together multiple words and it's just not coming together, that's probably a sign that your audience won't understand it too. And what I would do is, and this is actually what I did probably back in 2013, when before I even started my business, was I sat there and I made a list on a Word document of all the possible names I could have. I then went through that myself and highlighted a couple of my absolute favorites. I shared those with friends and family, talked to them about my brand and said, what do you think makes sense? And there will always be a clear winner. I honestly, I really believe that. You always come back to something that stood out from the beginning. And you don't have to have a list that's 3 pages long. It only takes one name to create your business name. Your slogan is often about 5 to 7 words. It's short, it's cheeky, it's memorable, something silly or spiritual that connects back to your values and the passions of your brand. Your logo is how you're going to visually define your brand. You can have multiple versions of your logo depending on what it's used for. I know personally, I have one that's more horizontal that I use at my booth, and then I have one that's more circular that I put on letterheads or social media when I'm building out graphics. As long as the two speak to each other and really speak to your brand, that's okay. You can have multiple versions. Your color palette, again, are those shades that really bring together your brand assets. If I was sitting here saying I'm a bold and exciting and vibrant brand, and then all of my colors are muted and pastel, or my logo is black and white, people are like, I don't get it. Like something's not connecting. So really try to try to do that exercise with yourself and say, does this really match up to those words that I said back in step one? Bold, vibrant, exciting. Does that come across through my colors? Um, Same with typography. This should really embody your style. Oh, sorry guys. I don't know if that just popped up, but I'm getting email notifications and trying to click out of them.
No,
okay.
we didn't see them.
Okay, good. I'm glad. And then lastly, your visuals and your marketing materials. So when you're thinking about your audience too, I think what's important is to showcase people in your images, not just have images of your product. Have photos of yourself with your product, have photos of other people, your customers who you're ideally targeting, that demographic that you're looking at. I'm looking at young women in their 20s. I want to show young women in their 20s holding my products, using my products. I think someone who does this really well is Amy from Overseasoned Amy. She does lots of bold and vibrant, they're different phrases. They all tie back to culinary, but they're all female focused. So smash the garlic and the patriarchy. And she shows women who she feels like really embody those statements wearing her products. Chefs, culinary people. So I think she's a really cool person to check out. Ayla, who's on here, actually was the person who showed me her brand. So props to Ayla for that one. Okay, this is probably one of the most simple examples that you guys have see everywhere, probably when you're driving. McDonald's. So if you go through this, you see, first of all, color, right? They have this very clear color palette. Whether you're looking at their merch or you're looking at their food, they all have these aspects of this color palette. They have a very specific font or typography. Maybe it's used in different ways where it's not filled in and then it's filled in depending on what they're using it for, but it's always that same really modern font. And then they have these images and icons that really fit their brand as well. So looking through this and really starting to pair it back to what's their business name, McDonald's, what's their slogan, I'm loving it. Logo, the M, the classic M, you see it, you know it, you feel hungry because of the red and yellow colors, and then you know their typography is modern and sleek. So I would try to challenge you guys to go through like your day to day, take 1 week and look at when you're driving or when you're going to the store, those brands where you can quickly look at them and say, I know exactly what they're doing here. I see their colors, I see their brand, I see their logo, their typography, and then try to do that same exercise for yourself. Okay, we made it to the end, guys. So marketing your story. Now that you know what your brand is at the core, what you stand for, why you're here, it's time to share that message with the world. This is the exciting part. You've done all of the work. Now all you have to do is start sharing it. And I'm telling you, if your target audience is where it should be, and you're looking at the people who are excited by your products, this part is really easy. So your brand is a hidden gem until it's discovered. Read that again. So you could have the best product, the best brand, but until you market yourself and put in the time to share it, to talk about it, to put yourself out there, no one's going to see it. That's really important. So all of your hard work, if you're not doing this last step, it won't be seen. Remember the details of your audience. Go back to these basics. If you're ever trying to figure out what product should I create or which market should I be at, go back to these likes, dislikes, and motivations. Excuse me, guys, give me 1 second.
It's all good. We've all been there.
Thank you, Kara. Okay. Draw attention to yourself on various channels. Be strategic about this. Let me click to this. So look at all these platforms. You have a lot to choose from. You don't have to show up on all of these. Be strategic. Go back to where your audience is. Make those decisions. Because if you're one person, you're not going to be able to do all this. So key questions to ask yourself. What social platforms does my audience use? Where do they shop? Where do they learn? Where do they read? Focus on 3 to 6 platforms that you can get in front of. I'm going to pause really quick for questions just to give myself a moment, but drop them in the chat if you have them.
Yeah, take a moment to hydrate, Erica. We do have a question from Danielle. She says, this part is the hardest that I find most intimidating and challenging. Typography. Where is the best place for free and legally safe typography? I have some thoughts about this, but Erica, you dive into it too.
I'll let you go first, and then I'll follow up with my thoughts.
I would just say, typography, Danielle, is a hard thing these days because one set of typography and font on Shopify is not available on Canva, is then not available on Wix. So then you are trying to find complementary fonts for all of these different platforms that are out there now. So it could be a little tricky unless you purchase font files that you then download into your website, which can be cost prohibitive and very expensive. I mean, some of these fonts that you have to buy, it's, $200 for bold, $200 for italics, $200 for regular. So it can be really tricky. I would say one of the best, most cost-effective solutions is really to identify the platforms that you're creating the most content from and see if they have similarities to, maybe they're not like exact, like Shopify has Laura, but Canva has Arial. I don't know. They're all sans serif. And then I would say, I lost my second point there. What was I going to say? But it's like a really tricky thing these days, unfortunately. I don't know if Erica, if you have any other thoughts about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same. When I'm looking for typography for any of my clients, I try to, if it's something that I feel strongly about will really like elevate their brand, and it needs to be something beyond the simple fonts in Microsoft, I will try to find a solution. They're usually like under like 200 or 180. It's a one-time purchase. Anything above that, it's just, in my opinion, not worth it. You
Agree.
can find other ways through your imagery and your colors to really speak your brand. Us small businesses, we don't have a big budget. And I think like Kara made a really good point. Like one thing that I find really frustrating about Instagram, even though I love the platform, is you can't import fonts. So if you're going on your stories, like you really have to be thoughtful about choosing one of their fonts and their colors. You can't upload your color palette. You kind of have to get as close as you can get, but you have to remember everyone else using the platform is struggling with that too. No one is able to upload that, you know?
That's a good point. And I think also like, particularly from a maybe a website typography perspective, if you're looking for complementary typography options. So for example, one, your heading could be one font and you're looking for a complementary body font, you could definitely Google those. You can Google like Shopify complementary typography sets. And people have put together sets of different typographies, A and B, that work well together and read together from a mobile perspective and from a desktop perspective. So that's a good cheat sheet, I would say.
Yeah, and you can also find a lot of those like packages, those like, I don't know if they're like kits or typography kits, branding kits. If you go on Pinterest, like honestly, when I was creating my logo, I had another designer friend do it for me. And when I was giving her my inspiration, I went and created a mood board for what I was looking for. I had fonts on there that I liked, I had colors, logo designs, all of that. And then her and I actually clicked through the links of the images I shared, and a lot of them were linked to designer sites where you could download those fonts, and a lot of them were free. Or she could say, this is the free version, this is as close as I can get without you spending money. What do you think of this? Did you feel like this embodies your brand? If not, let's up level it and you spend $200 one time and then you have it. So just something to think about. But yeah, like Kara said, don't put so much pressure on yourself because all of these platforms will not give you the opportunity to share your brand colors and logos. One platform I really love, it's free. The lowest package is free. Canva is amazing. I built this presentation in Canva. I don't pay for the pro or anything. You can create really basic, beautiful branding where you can upload your logo and color match your colors because you can actually type in the color code right into it. And so you can build graphics and design like assets through the platform. And again, it's free. Really, the only step up that I think is great for the paid package is the background remover. So it's a little bit more of that like graphic designer high end look. But yeah,
It doesn't even work that well, so don't
yeah,
worry about it.
exactly. So if you're trying to save costs, Canva's your way to go. There's tons of already like pre-made templates too, and everything is customizable. Um, Other questions on this? If not, I'll kind of close out with the last couple of key takeaways, and we can open the floor back up. I'll check in the chat really quick.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to just, even if you don't have a question, but you want to share a personal story or journey you've been on with your brand in relation to tonight's topic, please feel free to share it, unmute yourself. I mean, that's the best way to learn from each other. It's like Eric and I have just kind of been sharing personal stories throughout this thing, and it brings up other questions and other insights. So.
No brave souls. That's okay, guys. I know it's Thursday, so I feel you. I just want to end by saying, consistency is really key. Again, don't try to spread yourself so thin by doing all of this. Focus on 3 to 6. Start there. You can always up level, you can always scale back your workload's going to change. That's okay. I would say always have 1 to 2 that you're consistent on. For me, Instagram is like my go-to, but I also have my own channels, which are going to be my Shopify and my email. And that's something I think I've learned really from Kara is at any point, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube can shut down and then you don't have your business. So having your own unique website or URL or your email list where you can reach your customers outside of that platform is really important when you're thinking through these 3 to 6. It have at least 1 or 2 that are solely yours and that you're not depending on it. I mean, think about when Instagram went down. I think all the influencers in the world like had a mini heart attack because their whole business is built on that platform. They didn't have anything else to lean on. So not trying to scare you, but keep that in mind. It's important to know at any point they can change the algorithm and it won't be in your favor. So just something to think about. Other key takeaways: no business, no corporation, small business can survive without a differentiated brand. I mean that, it's true. Everyone has to have something unique that allows it to stand on its own. Connecting with the right people on that deeper level where they're connecting with your passions and your interest and your motivators, that will unlock that long lasting loyalty, those sales, the conversions, and it'll continue. The details matter. Whenever you're feeling like, oh my God, there's so much to learn out there, like, I don't know where to start. I need to do my logo, I need to do my website, like, my Instagram looks like crap. Go back to your basics. Go back to these details that we talked about, these tiny little details that will tell you all of your answers. What am I doing? Who am I targeting? And why am I doing it? Basic, basic, basic. Take your time. Kara and I talked about like giving you guys homework before this, and what we had ultimately decided was like, this is not something you can do in a day or a week. This is something you should be spending time on. And it's not one and done. It is something that you can revisit again in 2 years, but it's something you should be thinking about over a longer period of time because it's really important. And if you don't feel connected to it, you won't be successful. So take your time to go through this creative process and it will be fun. Like, make it fun for yourself. It doesn't have to feel like a business course. It can be exciting. Use your platforms like Pinterest and Instagram to save things that are inspiring you or giving you ideas and go back to those. And lastly, give yourself grace. This is a tough process. It is a long process, and you're not going to be perfect the first time around. You're not going to be perfect the last time around. Look at all these big brands that are constantly reinventing themselves, either because they've made mistakes or things haven't worked. That's okay. That's a way to learn. And if you have time 1 week and then the next 3 weeks you're traveling or you're with family, that's okay. Be present, be with your family, come back to this. It's a process. It doesn't have to be done in a certain period of time. So just give yourself grace. And with that, we'll wrap it up. Last couple Q&As, any brand stories you guys want to share, anything that really resonated with you or didn't make sense, now is the time. Feel free to ask them, guys.
That was so great. I feel so inspired and motivated just from a boss woman's perspective. And I really relate to that last bullet point of giving yourself grace in a moment and not feeling like everything needs to be done now, because as a small business owner, you are your toughest critic. You put the most pressure on yourself. You know, I'm always I always am like, I could do more. I could do more for people. We could do more events. We could do more workshops. And I'm like, yep. Wait, hold on, take a break. So I think it, this has been so great. So thank you so much, Erica.
Yeah, of course. And honestly, like, to just go off of what you were saying, like, as a small business, most of us on here are either probably single business owners or like a team under 10. Unless you have a corporation with like several built out like segments within your business and teams, you're not going to be able to do it all. So just set the stage for yourself right now. Do not hold yourself to the standard of being able to master everything and get to everything. Yeah. I can tell you, I've done this for a period of time. I did a short period of time where I was only focusing on my on my art business after I got laid off from my job a couple months ago. And even when I was solely focused on this, just me, I couldn't get to it all. I couldn't get to what I had to do, and I couldn't get to all the ideas I wanted to do.
Exactly.
And you just can't, and that's okay. And that's when you go back to your basics and say, what is most important? What's going to excite me? And what's going to drive sales back to my business? Those two things should be able to help you narrow down where you should be focusing.
Totally. We do have one question in the chat, and as far as there's a little bit off topic, but I think we can talk about today. As far as email lists, what I feel that it takes so long to acquire a decent list of people. How do you recommend increasing that number? It's question one, and then we do have a question that can we get the slides after the presentation? Yes, we can definitely send around the slides, and I'm also going to be sending a recording of this presentation around tomorrow morning. So keep an eye out for your inbox. But as far as, like thinking about email lists and email lists are so important to creating that unique voice and spreading that message. Do you have any thoughts about it?
Mm-hmm. So email lists, everything I know I learned from Kara and the Boston Women's Market, literally. Email is not my strength in my business, but I will say it's the most important. You're going to get more sales from your email list than you're going to get from any other platform. Because if someone is subscribing, it's because they care and they want your updates. Think about how many emails people get. If they're sitting here being like, I want to hear from you, they're probably going to be the ones coming and buying your product or your service. The best way that I've found to start, because I remember being like, who's going to care? I feel bad asking. Like, I don't want anyone to feel pressured. Start with your network. Like, just start with your network. You don't have to ask everybody, right? Start with friends, family, referrals, anyone who's ever told you, I really like your products, or like, hey, you should do a market. Anyone who brainstorms with you, those are the people you want to start with. It could be 5 people, it could be 20 people, it could be 100, but start somewhere. Those people are going to be the people who are going to propel your brand. Share via word of mouth. Hey, I think you should learn about this brand. Oh, you're looking for an artist. I know someone who could create a piece that matches your style. Word of mouth is the strongest way to this day to spread the word. And that brings me to saying one of the best ways to get people on your email list is in-person events, marketing yourself, because hiding behind a computer, you can get a lot of stuff. People like to like sit in the comfort of their own home and scroll, but meeting someone in person, you're not only seeing their brand, you're meeting them. And if they relate to you, they want to hear from you, and then they want to hear from your brand. So it goes back to you are your brand. I know for me, like when I started bringing my mom, who was on here, actually was the one who was like, Erica, why are you at your markets and you don't have a list where you can gather people's emails? It's a miss. And I was like, yeah, I know. And I went like another year without doing it. And then I started just putting out a sheet, super simple, like truthfully, like used a pen, wrote like name, email. And I was shocked that people wanted to do it. Like at first I felt badly and I felt awkward. And I'm like, I don't want to force them to give me their contact. Like the email is so personal. You'd be surprised how many people after you have a 2-minute conversation are like, that was really interesting. I want to hear more, and then you can bring that back, add it to your email list. And the more events you do, the more things you do on social, your list will start to grow slowly by slowly. And another good thing to think about, just as you're getting started, I wouldn't recommend it for like long-term customers because often there can be drop off. But if you have a product, you can often do a giveaway or a collaboration with another brand and encourage them to, in order to sign up for the giveaway, sign up for your email list. Again, not a long-term strategy. You'll get a lot of quick hits, especially if it's a super sexy product, but it'll at least get a few people in the door who are like, oh, there's more than just this product she's giving away. She does XYZ. So there's little strategies you can do, but I would say in-person events and people who already know you and your brand are the best place to start.
100%. I mean, I'll just say from a Boston Women's Market perspective, we've had signs with QR codes to easily sign up for our newsletter right from your phone. We have it on our banner, but to this day, just a pen and a piece of paper that says sign up for our newsletter outperforms any QR code, any little sign we have, any laptop we've ever put out to say, hey, sign up for our newsletter. I know it's a bitch to then go take that piece of paper and manually enter all those email addresses, but it 100% outperforms any other way in my experience. And I don't know if Erica, if you find that too. So it's really interesting how that works.
I am so guilty of, like, I got email addresses back at SOA in December that I haven't put into my,
Yeah,
it's hard to keep up with.
it is.
What I would say, and something I'm trying to do, is just time block it, put an appointment on your calendar and say, from 1 to 2 on Friday, I'm going to enter in all of these emails.
And I would just say also, you're putting all this time and energy into email marketing, and you might not see something immediately, and you might be sending emails to, Betty Sue all year long. You might not see a single sale from her. Come Christmas time, you're going to see that sale. All of a sudden, Betty Sue is going to start buying from mom, sister, cousins. So even if it's not an immediate payoff, it's all about reminding them that you're there and you're an option.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't know where to start, I would say, like, pick 3 to 5 brands that inspire you and sign up for their email list and see what they're doing too.
Does anyone else have any stories to share? Any other questions? We are at 7:16 now. We definitely try not to go past 7:30. So if anyone has any last minute stories or anything they'd like to share, we're totally all ears. In the meantime, while we're waiting for any last minute questions, just a reminder that our next workshop is on May 25th. It's all about creating a vendor booth and display that really is eye-catching, and it's all about tips and hacks and things to make your life easier on market day, because it can be pretty heavy lifting. So I think we have a question from Sasha, and I'm gonna click the ask to unmute and see if that's gonna work. Go ahead, Sasha.
Thanks, Kara. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much. Thanks, Erica, for sharing everything. I just wanted to say that I can at least share a little testimony to say that including the sort of personal touch in your brand is so important. And also, I think the audience or the customer base much more than I ever expected responds to it. And Erica, this summer you had taken a picture of me at one of the Boston Women's markets and were like, oh, you have to post it for your brand. And I was so hesitant to, because I usually try to keep myself out of the brand. And it was by far and away the most liked post with the most engagement that have ever had in 3 or 4 years of having social media presence for the brand. So it's certainly I can say it was living proof of what you've shared tonight, but it was just so helpful, and thank you so much for sharing everything. And I guess one question, we didn't quite touch on this, but I think one thing that I often struggle with is looking at the social media profiles or the website and kind of, with a color palette or with sort of the design focus that you want to have, how to ensure that the images and the presence still remains cohesive and still sort of fits within that and continues to promote that brand identity and to adhere to it. Because I think for me, coming from a brand with so many colors, there's so many different things that I want to include on social. And I think it just is hard to make sure there's kind of a cohesive identity that is maintained. But thank you all so much for organizing.
Of course. That's a really, really good question. First of all, I love that. I'm so glad that you mustered up the courage to share yourself, because your brand is awesome and you have such an energy. And I feel like, you can't always feel that over the phone or over the computer, but to see someone in their element with their stuff, there's something that's really exciting about that. So I'm glad that you shared that, and I'm glad it was successful. When it comes to just being cohesive, I would say don't put too much pressure on yourself when it comes to curation. There's definitely a fine line between being cohesive and being too curated. And you can see it really quickly when you go on Instagram, when people are definitely spending way too much time making their content be perfect or all graphics. People want to see the raw side of you. They want to see the imperfections, and that's why sharing yourself is so important. But my point is that you don't always have to have your brand colors in every lifestyle photo that you share. You know, I think within the best rule of thumb is when you go to your page, you can see the top of your grid, those nine squares. Within those 9 squares at any time, what I try to do is say, can I see a semblance of my brand colors? If I can't see all 4 of my brand colors next to each other, is that vibrant bold vibe coming through? Am I showcasing 1 to 3 of my products? Like, am I showing a planter, a sticker, a canvas? And most importantly, within that 9, you should show yourself at least twice. Like, don't ever have a period of 9 where you're not showing your face or your hands, or you're interacting with your products, or a reel of you creating. Like, you should always be within that top section, because at any point in time, a new person can come and discover you. And if they don't see you, they might get lost and click off the page. They might not see a product that they need at that moment. But if they see you, they might be interested in tapping to hear your story and what you have to say personally.
That's awesome. I love that concept of the top 9. And I don't know about you guys, and maybe this is just me, I am so sick of Instagram perfection, or this fake reality, and all the filters, and like, I just want to see genuine people doing genuine things. So, and I Sasha, I know exactly what photo you're talking about, and that's awesome to hear. I love that.
Yeah, honestly, like, I truly feel like Paige from Paige Lindsay Designs is one of the best people to see. When, like, she is so raw. You go to her page and it's absolutely stunning. If you go on her stories, sometimes she's crying, sometimes she's upset. Like, she's very genuine and raw. And that's why I sit there and I watch her 10 videos of herself talking, because I'm like, I relate to what she's saying. Like, I'm having a really crappy day too. And she's being real about it. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. And like, people want to see that. Like, there's moments where I'm like, should I post my dog on my story? Like, this is my brand page. I have a personal page. Should I save that? And I'm like, you know what? Sometimes I go for it, and you'd be shocked. People are like, oh, your dog. Like, they're interested in what you have to do, what you're doing, what's happening in your life. They don't just want to always see what you're selling. They want to get to know you and feel a part of your story. And again, that relates them back to why they love your brand, and why they might, when they're ready, when the time is right and they need your product or your service, they'll circle back and either buy themselves or recommend you to someone else.
Exactly. That's awesome. Okay, guys, I think we're going to have to wrap it up for the evening. As I said before, I'm going to send the recording of this around. This has been so awesome, Erica. Thank you so much for your time, sharing your knowledge with us, answering all our questions. This has been really insightful and meaningful. So thank you very much.
I'm so glad. Thank you guys all for showing up and, treating yourself to an hour and a half of learning and time for yourself to grow yourself. Like, you're here and you made the time, and you should be proud of yourself.
Awesome.
But thank you guys for being here and supporting this too. I really appreciate it.
I'll be sending around Erica's contact info. So if you have any questions about today's topics, or you want to work with her, or you have a follow-up question about anything we talked about today, you can reach out to her directly, or you're welcome to pass any questions along to me. I can send it to Erica. Whatever you're comfortable with, we'll make sure happens. But yeah, I hope to see you guys on May 25th or at, an upcoming market in May. So thanks so much, everyone, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you, Erica.
Bye, guys.
Bye.